As the 2070s pushed on, the world of the Fallout universe was growing darker and darker. Food and fuel shortages, civil unrest, terrible working conditions, and strange epidemics harried the public, while the Sino-American War threatened to turn nuclear at any moment. In this darkness, there were but a few points of light, providing these people with any sort of whimsy and hope for a better future. This is the story of how one of those specks of light was on the verge of falling into darkness when the world came to an end. This is the story of Wilson Atomatoys. In 2042, two men came together with a dream, producing a toy that would make children happy and give them hope for a better future. Those men were George Wilson and Arland Glass, and the company they founded was known as Wilson Atomatoys. George Wilson, likely responsible for putting up the capital to build the toy company, became the president, while Arland Glass became the fledgling company's designer. The toy was the Giddyup Buttercup, a robotic horse. In those early days, George and Arland put everything they had into the company, working long hours to ensure the endeavor's success. Their efforts paid off handsomely. Giddyup Buttercup was a hit with little girls everywhere. Through the hard work of this partnership, they expanded Wilson Atomatoys, building a corporate office in Boston's Back Bay and a manufacturing plant outside Quincy. This success came at a personal cost, though. George Wilson's son, Mark, effectively grew up without a father. Seeing the toll it took on their relationship, when Arland Glass and his wife Cheryl had a daughter on November 3rd, 2070, he made sure to make time for his family. Little Marlene Glass eventually became a beloved and frequent visitor to the offices of Wilson Atomatoys, coming by the HQ after school to see her father. When the late 2070s rolled around, George Wilson brought his estranged son Mark into the company as a way to get closer to him. When George retired, he put Mark in charge as a means of making amends with him. Mark's rise to power would have dramatic consequences for the company his father built. Though Mark Wilson took his father's place literally, he was no replacement for George. He had none of his father's love of or vision for the Giddyup Buttercup. While George had regularly met with Arland to talk about the toy and potential improvements and updates, Mark avoided meeting with his father's old business partner. However, he did show a drive to change the company in other areas, revamping the toy company's security. Employees were made to wear ID badges, and visitors found their movements restricted. They had to be accompanied by an employee at all times. For the most part, these changes in company culture simply meant that Arland Glass was left without his regular lunches with the president, the requirement to pick up Marlene from security when she came by for a visit, and likely questions about why a toy company needed the new security turrets they were installing. The first sign of serious trouble came on October 1st, 2077, when the sales forecasts arrived, predicting a 17% decline in sales year over year. Arland's reactions to these numbers was disbelief. The numbers had been solid for years. What had changed? That reaction was quickly followed by a burst of manic energy. He would do anything required to save his life's work. He began to brainstorm ideas as how to restore the sales numbers, including premium editions, collectible variations, along with creating a boys' version of the toy. He attempted to make meetings with Mark to build a new partnership with his old friend's son. However, these attempts failed when none of the requests resulted in a one-on-one. Reminiscent of the old days, Arland spent as much time at work as possible innovating on the Giddyup Buttercup. He worked on improving the leg servos and developing different colors of the toy, a test that precluded him from attending Marlene's recital. He hated missing her events and promised he would make it up to her when he righted the ship. His efforts seemed hampered on all sides. Every meeting he attempted to organize wound up canceled. Only those events that he could handle in-house moved forward. Even phone calls to the plant foreman to discuss potential changes went unreturned. On October 20th, with every act stalled, he was frantic to find a way forward before the board meeting on the 22nd. Regardless of these struggles, he was looking forward to this meeting. It would finally allow him to pin down his evasive new partner. When the day of the board meeting finally came, it served as a revelation to Arland as to why everything in the company seemed to be going off the rails. When he walked into the boardroom, he saw the usual suspects and a man in uniform, U.S. Army Colonel Thomas Nelson. The colonel was the director of the government's Scythe program, an initiative to convert civilian manufacturing into factories producing war material. Mark Wilson had been working to turn his father's toy company into a landmine manufacturer, an act of ideological betrayal that had begun weeks before. When Mark rose to the head of the company he had no stake in building, he began to look for an easy way to turn it into a money-printing machine he could ignore. With the ongoing war, the government was looking for more arms manufacturers. Participating members of the Scythe program would turn over most of their production lines to the government, but would still produce a small quantity of their normal wares. However, should a full-scale conventional mobilization be required, they would turn their plants over fully to arms production. Mark Wilson approached the government looking to do his part for big returns. On September 1st, 2077, their application was accepted. Joining this secret government program led Wilson Atomatoys to update their security protocols, hence the ID cards and the security turrets. Meanwhile, in order to make the government program look more enticing to the board, Mark Wilson told his head of operations, Nathaniel Hawk, to fudge the sales forecasts down. a job he farmed out to his subordinate, Paula. While most would accept these numbers, it had been a massive shot of adrenaline to Arland Glass, hence his frantic efforts to salvage the Giddyup Buttercup. He attempted repeatedly to meet with Mark Wilson, requests the president rebuffed as he had no desire to reveal the company's change in direction. As Arland attempted to talk to the factory shift supervisor to discuss improvements in different versions of the company's flagship toy, they had been busy turning production lines over to make landmines. Mark was aware that Arland wouldn't take these changes well, and had been hoping to keep him out of the October 22nd meeting with Colonel Nelson, going so far as to not invite him. Desperate to turn things around, Arland came uninvited. Arland was enraged by the revelation of Mark's betrayal of the company. He denounced Mark and his plans in front of the entire board and Colonel Nelson. Unable to stomach this open act of disrespect, Mark fired Arland on the spot and had him escorted out of the building. Hopeful to meet with Mark and change his mind about the Scythe program, Arland attempted to return to the office twice that afternoon, leaving a holotaped manifesto on his second visit. Though he failed to reach Mark, his tape did. In it, Arland laid out the importance of toys to give children a concept of and hope for a world without war. Arland begged Mark not to throw his and his father's life's work away. If not for them, then for the children. Mark threw the tape away and went looking for his chief of operations. Nate, disillusioned by the outcome of the meeting, had left the office immediately after, forgetting even his intended date with his secretary, Paula. Throughout the building, many were depressed by the events of the afternoon, unsure of a future for the company without Arland, its heart and soul. Unable to find Nate, Mark left a holotape telling him to be in his office first thing Monday morning to discuss salvaging the Scythe contract, or Nate's resignation if he wasn't willing to do the former. The next morning, Saturday, October 23rd, 2077, hoping to discuss things with Mark, Arland returned to the office and was promptly escorted from the property when encountered by security. Up in his office, Mark was reviewing his possibilities when he received a message from Colonel Thomas Nelson. It told him that the nuclear conflict that had been looming over everything had finally come home. Bombers were incoming. The colonel told them to seek shelter. Over the subsequent 2 centuries, the buildings of Wilson Atomatoys were looted and served as temporary shelters for survivors of the apocalypse. But none of these people are known entities. By 2287, super mutants released from the Institute had taken control of both of Wilson Atomatoys' locations in the Commonwealth. It was in this state that these sites were explored by the sole survivor of Vault 111. There are many reasons why the sole survivor may have been drawn to Wilson Atomatoys' corporate headquarters and factory, many of them faction missions. Beyond that, there's of course the motive of basic exploration and a need to scavenge. However, there is one reason above all others for the sole survivor to visit the sites, and that is on the behalf of Arland Glass. Yes, the original designer of the Giddyup Buttercup and the soul of Wilson Atomatoys is still alive in 2287. He owes his survival to the fact that he had gone to his former workplace early on the day of the bombs to attempt to make his boss see reason. By the time he got back to the home he shared with his wife and 6-year-old daughter in Cambridge, all he found was a smoking, radioactive crater. Despondent and hoping to die, he laid down in the ruins of his home. He was not expecting to awaken as a ghoul. By 2287, he lived in the Slog, a settlement exclusively occupied by sentient ghouls. In visiting the Slog, the sole survivor could meet the man and hear a request from him. He wanted to work on a Giddyup Buttercup toy, but needed some parts. For this, he suggested the sole survivor look in the old factory outside Quincy. The sole survivor agreed to help and departed for the Wilson Atomatoys factory. Upon arrival, the sole survivor came under the concentrated attack by the mutants under their minigun-wielding leader, Big Mac, no relation. After taking these oversized creatures out, the sole survivor did indeed find a number of Giddyup Buttercup parts. They then decided that as the corporate headquarters in the back bay was on the way back to the Slog, that they would check it out. Within, they once again found themselves under constant assault from the structure's many super mutants. After battling through the ruins, learning the story of the company from notes, holotapes, and terminal entries, they came across the locked door to the development office, a door that had been locked for 210 years. Within, they found a time capsule, a perfectly preserved slice of 2077. The walls were even mostly free of damage. After learning about Arland Glass's life before the war, they found something they knew he would treasure more than anything, a recording made by his wife and daughter before they'd been taken from him. Having just such a holotape themselves, the sole survivor knew how much it would mean to him. Thus, they departed for the Slog, bringing both the toy parts and Marlene's holotape. While he was grateful for the toy parts, his reaction to hearing the voices of his wife and daughter for the first time in over 200 years was far greater. He handed over all the caps he had, as well as a small version of the Giddyup Buttercup, a gift he had planned to give Marlene on her 7th birthday. He'd been carrying it around all these years. As he went back to listen to the holotape once more, the sole survivor left him to his work. Returning to the Slog sometime later, the sole survivor found Arland gone. On his workbench sat a fully assembled Giddyup Buttercup. Wiseman, the head of the Slog, told the sole survivor that Arland had left looking for more toys to repair. He thanked the sole survivor for helping Arland, noting that he seemed to have made peace with his past. While later wandering the wasteland, the sole survivor came across a Giddyup Buttercup sitting alone in a field. By it, a note saying, "For a child who needs it, Arland Glass." That does it for the narrative, but I have a few notes before closing things out. First, let's consider the faction missions that lead to the facilities of Wilson Atomatoys. As a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, the sole survivor may visit both sites to clear them of the abominable super mutants, to guide a squire in training through either, or in search of advanced technology in the headquarters. As the general of the Minutemen, they may have been drawn to the factory to clear it of super mutants for a nearby settlement, or to the headquarters to recover a kidnapped settler. As a servant of the Institute, the sole survivor may have come either seeking super mutant tissue samples or to recover an escaped synth at the factory. As a member of the Railroad, they may have visited either seeking information on Randolph's safe house or to rescue a synth in danger within the headquarters. Lastly, as the overboss of Nuka World, they may have come seeking a body to collar in the factory or to kill a particularly dangerous foe in the headquarters. Second, the only other company that we know of that was applying for the Scythe program was Hallucinogen Inc. I covered that company in a separate video. Third, as for the Scythe program itself, the concept of converting civilian factories to produce war material has historical precedent. Just as an example, in the US during the Second World War, car companies produced fighters, bombers, jeeps, tanks, armored vehicles, military trucks, and machine guns. The Singer Sewing Machine Company made guns and bomb sight components. Maytag made aircraft parts. Even Lionel Trains, a toy manufacturer, made navigation equipment. It's perfectly conceivable that the United States government of the Fallout universe would be prepping for a larger, conventional war in the fall of 2077. As for the landmines produced by Wilson Atomatoys, I believe that mines were produced by the government itself, using contractors and government plants, from parts produced by other normally consumer goods manufacturers. I also think that using Wilson Atomatoys to produce landmines is a misstep when you consider that, in tinkering with a Giddyup Buttercup, Arland Glass produced a toy horse leg so powerful it punched through the floor. While there were other robotics manufacturers, it feels that there were other things the company could have produced. That being said, it could well be that Arland Glass was the only designer of consequence at the company, and clearly being against becoming a war contractor, it could be that he wouldn't go along and landmines were the best they could do. Fourth, though we find the HQ and factory in Fallout 4, posters for the company existed in both Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Further, the toy appears in great quantities above the alien spacecraft in the Mothership Zeta DLC for Fallout 3. From the Fallout 3 and New Vegas posters, it appears that the company used to be called Wilson Atomatoys instead of Wilson Atomatoys. Fifth, Wilson Atomatoys and the Giddyup Buttercup was referenced in the Fallout TV series in Season 1, Episode 6, entitled The Trap. In this episode, Cooper Howard, while preparing for an advertisement wrap party, reads and then puts down a copy of the Capitol Post. It's hard to tell, but I believe it says Thursday, January 4th, 2074 at the top. Anyway, the reference to Wilson Atomatoys is in an article titled Wilson Atomatoys Faces Lawsuit Over Giddyup Buttercup. Sixth, it is possible to complete Arland Glass's mission in a completely different way than the process depicted in the narrative. If you've already visited the corporate HQ of Wilson Atomatoys, you can simply remind Arland Glass of the stockroom there. You can also hand over Marlene's holotape at this point if you have it. If you're wondering why Arland can't just create new versions of the parts from junk, it's because the Giddyup Buttercup was built with top-of-the-line technology for its time, hence the $16,000 price tag. Seventh, when I finished researching the lore for this script, I checked the wiki to see if I missed anything. I saw a claim there that, after leaving the Slog, Arland Glass can sometimes be found in Cambridge Crater, the place where his wife and daughter died. Believing this, I originally included a moment in the script where the sole survivor would see him in the crater. When going to get footage of this moment, I visited the crater dozens of times, including on meaningful days such as October 23rd, the day of the bombs, November 3rd, Marlene's birthday, and November 18th, the day of his wedding anniversary with Cheryl, and I never found him there. At this point, I don't know if he actually ever does go to the crater or if people fabricated that with console commands. It would make sense for him to go there, but as I said, I've never encountered it organically. Lastly, I've been hoping for a rideable, adult-sized Giddyup Buttercup for a long time. Horses are extinct in the Fallout universe as far as I know, so this would be a perfect replacement. It would have been just the thing for Fallout New Vegas. Imagine a group of raiders riding up on a robotic horseback. The eyes of the horses glowing red, shining horns welded to their heads, steam issuing forth from the nostrils. The frustrating thing is that the horse movement mechanics have been in Bethesda's engine since Oblivion, so the work involved would be primarily visual. In this content by itself, Bethesda could have added them to the Commonwealth. One of Arland Glass's ideas when brainstorming was a rideable version of the toy for little boys. I'm hopeful at some point we'll finally get a rideable version. Anyway though, that's enough on the notes, let's close things out. The tragedy of Wilson Atomatoys is not just about a company that lost its way when a man who didn't earn his power abused it. It's also about a man who lost the moments that mattered most. Arland Glass skipped a recital in the name of work, left home one morning never to see his family again, and spent 2 centuries haunted by those absences. This story carries a lesson that echoes far beyond the Fallout universe. Life is fleeting, and you never know when the goodbye you say at the door will be your last. Don't let the fear of loss paralyze you, but do make time for the things that matter while you still can. In the end, this new life, traveling the wasteland, leaving toys for children who need them, is a beautiful way for Arland Glass to preserve his life's work, giving children the ability to imagine a better future. Something that is, if anything, more important in 2287 than it was in 2077. Alright, I think that'll do it for this video. Follow me on X for lore video announcements at Gaming with Maps. My Discord is open to the public, there's a link in the channel's banner. I stream every Friday evening on YouTube, come check it out if you're interested. If you appreciate what I do here and you want to support the channel financially, you can become a member on YouTube or a patron with Patreon. I want to thank my channel members and patrons Mesothelioma, 76 of Texas, Dark Malcontent, Real76, Samsung Smart Fridge, Night Spearhead, Electric Head, Hero Cunning, Laced Cake, Oz Born and Bred 73, Clay, Prince Julius, and Doc Vanguard Voyager for their support. Thank you to those of you who've made super chats and super thanks as well. I want to specifically thank Dark Malcontent for helping with this video script. This has been the Irresolute Cartographer. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.